Good afternoon. Good to be here. Well, the government has decided that they really need to try and simplify what is actually become a really, really complicated system in the UK. A system both in terms of how you produce a plan for your local area, but equally how you get planning permission for individual developments. And the result of that is that it's pretty known that we've got a housing crisis. Housing is very expensive, in some places almost impossibly expensive, and that something needs to be done about that. The general principle is central government sets the rules, the framework. Local government produces a local plan, and that's done by the local planning authority. There's a clue. They produce a plan which has to show that there is sufficient space for what is known as need, both for housing and employment land and everything else. And then individuals, developers, people, whatever, can come forward with proposals for particular developments. They make a planning application. The local authority decides whether that application is okay or not. They can accept it or not. If they say it's no good, then you can appeal against that. And that can go all the way up to a public inquiry and so on. There is also a system for public inquiries for the actual plan. And that is supposed to be a plan for a 5-year period. About half of local authorities don't have a valid plan because the whole process takes so extraordinarily long that by the time they've got to the point of having an inquiry for their plan, it's already out of date. And they have to start again. We were trying to come up with ways that you could make the system more comprehensible to ordinary people, more engaging. So we propose that for your local plan, it's a much simpler process with simpler ways of defining the areas for development, and that you had to have engagement before you produced your plan with your local residents and indeed other people who were interested, so that hopefully you could produce a plan, still a plan-led system, which is what ours is known to be, a plan-led system where you might actually have valid plans for most places most of the time. And people would be much clearer before they made an application whether it would be accepted or not. Our proposal is that in your plan, you should identify 3 kinds of areas, not calling them zones, because zones has a whole other set of stuff around it. One of your zones should be the areas which are suitable for development, and you might have some design codes and consult about design and the sort of things that people might actually like to have in their area. I think that's actually one of the problems about community acceptability. One of your areas would be the places where you're not going to have any development, whether it's a green belt or whether it's an area of outstanding natural beauty or whether it's simply something which the community has agreed is really not suitable, a floodplain, for example. And then a third area where there's some development would be suitable, but it would be more case by case, and everybody again would have a chance to say something about an individual proposal. I don't think that we had a specific proposal for that. What we're trying to do is just put in place the building blocks which would enable you to get to a more effective, more engaging and simpler system with fewer hoops that everybody, expensive hoops that everybody has to jump through before they can get a permission. Now, as you do that, you would also make it easier to bring development forward, but also there would be less incentive. It would be a quicker process. There should be less incentive to land bank. to have stuff just sitting there in the hope that eventually, or in the expectation, eventually you'll need to develop it. And as the system becomes more flexible, eventually, then that should help manage land prices. Because otherwise, that's a market. So, you know, you're just trying to make the market more effective. I don't think we do that terrifically well. We've got better, and we've got particularly better in cities where there's been a move to mayors and city deals and devolution, because in a more devolved system, there's better ability of the business community to engage with the political community and the other civic institutions, and to build a shared vision of what they want the city to be like. If you do it all top down in London, you know, it's all being done to, not done by. Done by is what matters. The affordable housing question exists particularly in the areas of high demand. So one way to address that is to actually identify places where people would like to see, or would be willing to see at any rate, high quality, well-designed extensions or new settlements. And that in itself, by increasing supply, will help. You know, this is the economist's answer after all. Increase supply, the price will be moderated, or at least not grow so fast, and housing will become more affordable. I don't think you must increase affordable housing by saying you must produce a particular proportion. There will continue to be pressure. And I think you just have to accept this is not a problem that you kind of completely solve, but it's certainly a problem that you can mitigate. Well, I think you do two things. One is, well, the role of the National Infrastructure Commission is to think longer term. So we've got a 20, 30-year horizon that we're trying to generate an assessment for infrastructure need, which then also thinks about a vision for development and so on at a very high level, not constraining it to particular places. But we're certainly thinking like that. And I think the other thing is to encourage and devolve to cities and city regions where they can develop their own vision, and they are doing that. There are some ways in which you can raise more funds at local authority level. I think that you should make that easier. And we should allow, for example, local sales taxes to be, we have a national system, the value-added tax system, and I see no reason why you shouldn't say, if this amount of value-added tax is being raised in your region, you can keep 1% of it or whatever for local purposes. We used to have a system for regional planning in the UK, and that was dismantled in the early 2000s, rightly, in my view. So I don't think it makes sense to have one plan. Certainly, the idea of a plan which you are going to deliver. Now, it's certainly possible to have some regional visions, and you can encourage people to come up with a vision for a bigger area. But we've really got to distinguish between the vision and the plan. So you may need planning, but the plan immediately becomes a straitjacket, because it's all about what you can't do as much as what you can do. And over a 20-year period, life evolves. It has to keep changing all the time. And I, in some ways, hate the word plan, It smacks to me of the kind of central planning. We know what you need. We're going to give it to you, and woe betide you if you don't want it, because we know better than you what you want. I so disagree with that. The whole point of market systems is that they allow new stuff to happen. They allow you to explore what people really want. And if you have it centralized, and the UK is one of the most centralized systems in the world, if you have it too centralized, you'll never discover that. You never allow for that innovation. You never allow local stuff to happen. And I think that's a really, really serious error. Keep it simple. Think of ways in which you engage local people in the making of the plan, and be very aware that it will not survive contact with reality, because plans don't. So you have also to think about how within you have a longer term vision, but you're going to need to be adjusting all the time what actually goes on.